Hey friends, welcome back. I am psyched to have back on the line David Morgan from themorganreport.com. And David's been a longtime friend to SGT Report and to those of us who follow precious metals closely. David, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Sean.
Hey, thanks for coming on, David. Look, I want to jump right in the deep end today, and I want to talk about something that many of us follow. I want to talk about Clif High's WebBots project. For a long time, as you know, David, the WebBots have been predicting the possibility of the silver to gold ratio not only going back to its historic norm of 15 to 1 or 10 to 1 as currently found in the Earth's crust, but going possibly as low as 1 to 1, meaning silver in the future could be priced at a level equating with gold. And I want to play a clip for you here from our friend Jay Snip, who keeps in close touch with Clif High. Do you mind if I play that for you now and get your impressions?
No, go ahead, please.
All right, guys. Listen up, guys. This is pretty powerful. As we know, gold is moving from west to east.
The data sets accruing to China Pop over the summer 2016 as model space has moved forward have stimulation of the public appetite for silver. The pressures on the silver markets will be, after the fact, shown to be a result of stockpiling of silver and gold by the populace in China. The datasets would have the officialdom making big pushes to get the populace moving to purchase. This is, in its sets, indicated to be an outgrowth in the dollar stoppage as the dollar breakdown continues and the USA pop gets hit by high inflation as dollars attempt to come home to the Fed. This, in its turn, is going to turn out to be a huge boon, not boom, but boon, for the power structure in China as the silver shine gets taken up seriously by the population. Noting what will happen to the silver to gold ratio, the Chinese officialdom would seem to be trying to push the population in the right direction, though, of course, for their own self-serving interests.
David, hey, just real quick, I want your impression on that. We know that silver and gold in physical form are moving to China, and now the government of China seems to be suggesting to its population to hoard the metal in physical form. What do you make of that WebBot update?
Well, I think it's accurate, and I'm going to elaborate, and it's probably take 10 minutes. But first of all, if you go back, and I forget the exact years, but the idea is not only an idea, it's a fact. Back, roughly a decade or so, China was exporting 100 million ounces of silver a year, exporting out of China. And then, I forget, but it was like 6 years ago or so, they started being a net importer of 100,000 ounces. So that's 100 million. So that's a 200 million ounce swing. And the other thing that I thought about for the week or two before the interview was a lot about the silver history in recent terms. I mean, in my lifetime. So you go back to the Hunt brothers, it's often discussed. What people don't seem to realize about silver in general for my generation, or maybe people slightly older than me, was that, and this is a fact for your audience, Sean, but a lot of people don't even know this much, that in 1965 we were issued slugs. But through 1968, you could actually take a silver certificate to the Treasury and get silver for it. So there was circulating 90% silver coins in the United States until and through 1964. But it was illegal to own gold until 1973. So you had this gap between, I'll call it 65 and 73, where really all you could do if you understood monetary history at all, and Mr. Bunker Hunt certainly did, was to preserve your wealth in silver. Now, the only other way to access gold, and many did that were awake and aware, was through the rare coin market or or through gold shares. And an interesting story, if I might, Sean, I was speaking in Dallas, and I usually send out a little text message only through my, membership base, and I just noted, well, I'll be in Dallas, this date for the next 2 days, and lo and behold, the manager for the Hunt Trust, who I'd met earlier, I won't give out his name, but he noted that, and I was actually eating breakfast before the event, and he and an elderly gentleman, I say that because he was probably 10 or 15 years my senior, sat down and had breakfast with me. And I pretty much had gotten the story from the silver story secondhand. I never got to interview Bunker Hunt, unfortunately, but This gentleman was telling me the kind of positions that the Hunts were taking in the gold share market during that time frame. But back to basics, people start talking about near term as far as what the commitment of traders looks like and the amount of contracts out there and all that. Well, basically, if you go back and read Silver Bulls by Paul Sarnoff and look at what the volumes were in silver in those days, it may shock you, especially knowing that the population of the world has doubled since Kennedy was assassinated. So from the time frame I'm talking about, 1964 till now, we've gone from roughly 3 billion to 7 billion, or 3.5 billion. So the point I'm making is there weren't a lot of derivatives, there weren't a lot of things out there that are available now to invest in that obfuscate the true nature of silver as money and then gold as money, which was, and up until August 15th, 1971. But this was one of the reasons that the early adopters, you might say, jumped on the silver bandwagon. It was really you couldn't use gold except through the only direct ownership was either rare coins or gold stocks. And then in 73, of course, that all changed when it was allowed for U.S. citizenry to own gold again. A lot of that has been lost, and I'm not making it right or wrong. I'm just trying to give a little bit of history here of why silver actually was probably thought of more as money back in that time frame than it is now. I mean, I read these articles every so often about silver not being money, which always makes me laugh because the word money and the word silver is synonymous in like 50 countries of the world. Right. I mean, it's like, you can imagine going into Mexico and holding up a silver coin and saying, plata is not plata. Money is not money. Silver's not money. I mean, silver was money of the world for a long time. In fact, the silver standard was what ruled. But and that's another thing I think we can talk about later, Sean, was, again, putting some thought into our interview, was that there's a great paper, I forget the name of it exactly, but the gold standard is one step to fiat. And that's what the Yellow Brick Road and the Wizard of Oz was all about. If you could get the people to give up silver as money, and of course they didn't, that's what the Golden Cross speech was all about, but it was forced on them, and the bankers only had one metal to control, and they owned it. Well, he who owns the gold makes the rules. So a gold-only standard is like the step required before you go into a full fiat system. Whereas if you have a bimetallic standard, it's more difficult for them. Believe me or not. The establishment cares more about silver than they care about gold, not from a monetary aspect, but probably from a control aspect. If you look at what Johnson really said, he basically said silver's too valuable to use as money. We need it in industry. Now, those are my interpretations or paraphrasing, but that's basically what he's alluding to. It's like I'm getting a lot of pressure on me from certain powers that be that are heavily involved in the silver market. And we got to let go of these coins. We got to give you these slugs instead. We got really important things to do with this metal.
Yeah, that's interesting. As you're speaking, I'm thinking of what's going on as we speak in China with the SGE. We've seen news from SRS Rocco that the SGE has acquired almost as much physical silver in just the short term as JP Morgan has acquired over the past several years. And JP Morgan has, I think, stacked, tens of millions of ounces of physical silver. So even though the cartel, the Western banking cartel, take it all the way back to the 60s, take it back to the cartel that influenced Nixon to get us off the gold standard and move us entirely into the petrodollar, that cartel no longer controls the global paradigm. I think. I could be wrong. It could be part of a big master plan, but I think there's chess moves being played here from different factions, David, that would suggest that the Chinese are doing something that the Rockefeller Federal Reserve cartel does not like. And for them to promote physical silver and physical gold for their own population, boy, that stands in stark contrast to what we see here in the West. You never, ever would hear the United States government suggest people run out and get physical silver.
Exactly, and it's, first of all, I believe that. It appears strongly, looking at all the evidence that I've studied, that there is a faction or a breakaway between the Anglo-American Empire and, let's call it, the axis of the BRICS. I think it's real. I don't think it's orchestrated. And even if the powers at the top of the pyramid in whatever nation state they reside, let's just call it an east-west paradigm, agree, they may be agreeing just to get to where they want to be before they break away. So there could be at the top level an agreement that, yeah, we're all together. But it goes one step beyond that, in my view. And I'm going to quote the late Michael Rupert that left us April 13th, 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And this is really, really important to know. And he says, and I quote, "Until the way money functions changes, nothing changes. Until the way money works changes, nothing's going to change." And that's something that we really don't, I think, address often enough, Sean, on these type of shows. And this is being slightly critical of myself as well, is that, if you look at communism, fascism, socialism, I don't care what ism you want to talk about, what's running it is the structure of money. The whole idea that you can get something for nothing is comical, yet the entire system is built on the fact that you can create something for nothing. The only real creation, I wrote about this in one of my early essays in the public domain, I forget the title of it, that really, in a way, if you really think it through, man creates almost nothing. In other words, it either comes growing on the land or you dig it out of the ground and you reform it. And there's not some creativity, but use your magic wand and create something out of thin air. That's pretty tough. The only thing that's done is the monetary system. And again, I repeat that, until that changes, you're not really going to change a whole lot. I mean, yes, you might have political leaders that are more benevolent than others, or you might get them putting things into the public domain that are more beneficial to the population, or, there's so many problems we talked about the last time you had me on. But until you change the monetary system, you really haven't changed much.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I want to talk about currency wars and negative interest rate policy, which you have called the making of the next global crisis. And of course, you're right. But first, I want to back you up and say that until people recognize that money creation by these big central banks, by the Federal Reserve, by the Bank of International Settlements, the tool of money creation is the mechanism to enslave populations. I just did an interview recently with Marco Saba, the president of the Italian Institute for Monetary Studies, and he said something that I thought was powerful enough that I kicked off the interview with it. Let me play it for you here.
The problem is this, that the United States government suffer from the Stockholm syndrome. You know what is the Stockholm syndrome?
Oh yeah, you begin to love your captors.
Exactly, with the banking system. The US government is in a Stockholm syndrome with the banking cartel in the United States. So they don't understand that the terrorists are them.
David, I just wanted to play that for you because I think he's right. I think that we suffer from the Stockholm syndrome in this country, at least the people at large do, and the government officials do. Those maybe they're in the pockets of the banks to begin with, but they play along with this narrative that we can't hold Goldman Sachs responsible for their crimes that led to the 2008 crisis, because if we did, it would bring the whole system down. There would be collateral consequences as described by the Department of Justice. It's the reason we can't prosecute them. We are in a position of being enslaved, and we've learned to love our enslavement to these banks, all under the guise of their money creation. And they make the money out of thin air, David. At the end of the day, that's the problem. And as Marco and I talked about in that interview, we hear that the Italian banks they're in a major crisis, 21% underperforming loans or non-performing loans. And Marco makes the point that the banks created 100% of the money out of thin air. So if 20% of the money is non-performing loans, we're being tricked into believing that the whole system will come down. It's the trick of money creation that needs to be addressed, David.
Exactly. I mean, I remember when I really got into this, I started kind of as a kid with some curiosity about why did the coinage change, but until I started learning the Constitution as, I think, an 8th grader, and realized, we're supposed to be using gold and silver at the state level for payments of debt. And I asked the teacher, why we weren't doing that, and she had no answer, so I knew it could snow indoors at that time. I still had that kind of thirst or quest for it, and one of the most important speeches that I ever heard as a youngster, meaning in my early 20s, was from Jim Dines. And Jim started his speech by saying, all that exists in the universe is truth or resistance to it. Mm-hmm. And in the time I've said that, if I were to say that $1 equals $1, I have lied, because they have created more, and watering the milk never works. And I would add on to that, if all that exists is truth or resistance to it, and we know that you can't get something for nothing, and the truth is that you can't get something for nothing, then obviously there is a day of reckoning. And actually, the day of reckoning has occurred. It occurred for everybody's manifestation in 2008. And yet we pretend, as Jim Sinclair says, pretend and extend that that event has been taken care of when all they've done is added to the problem, because it's a debt problem or a creation of fictional wealth from nothing. And that day of reckoning is going to unravel further and further until it's pretty much recognized by, let's say, 2, 3, 4, 5% of the population for what it is. One of my gripes, and I'll rant here slightly, Sean, is that a lot of people that visit shows like yours and mine, they look at it as infotainment. They get information and they get something that might provoke thought and might even sound cool at a party or whatever, but they're really not seriously involved. They just look at it as, yeah, that's good for them, and yeah, it could happen, but they're too much into the either Stockholm syndrome or / the normalcy bias, or a combination thereof, that, well, at least my paycheck is pretty good compared to yours and I'm still working on and on. Whereas you have to have, some idealists such as myself and others that say, no, this whole thing is wrong and we've got to change it.
Right.
And we've got to change it before it hurts, even more people than it already has. And that's a tall task. Yet, there's statues are to individuals. You don't see statues at the committee of XYZ. You don't see, the Foreign Banking Committee having a big statues of all 10 people, or the G20 having a statue, big statues. No, it's Gandhi. It's an individual that had such a thought-provoking experience with the population that they were able to change things forever, in a way, or at least for a great length of time. And I'm not pointing at myself at all. I'm not trying to say that at all. What I'm really trying to say is that people give up too easily. They aim too low and hit rather than aiming too high and idealizing what they might make. Even if you don't achieve it, at least you should strive for it. And we've got to get going on this monetary problem, because everything stems from money. It transcends religion, nation states, sexual orientation, education. Everybody's concerned about their money, and about 99% of the population still don't know the difference between money and currency.
Yeah, well, and that's what's so scary about it. And you're right. It's the watchers on the watchtower that are just trying to warn, it's really trying to get people to wake up, because I do firmly believe that if by intervention from God himself we could wake up all our brothers and sisters in this country, we could probably bring the criminals to trial and prosecution and imprisonment fairly quickly, because, there is a tipping point that can be reached. We saw it with bovine growth hormone in the milk. Nobody wanted to drink it. Monsanto made a lot of money from it. Eventually, nobody would buy the milk with that crap in it, and they had to take it out. Now you never find BGH in the milk. And it's just one example I like to cite, because when I say that money creation by the big criminal banks, central banks, is a tool of enslavement, you know as well as I do that that's not hyperbole. Because if you take a look what the Federal Reserve has done to the dollar since its inception in 1913, and you take a look at the fact that to earn a dollar, you exchange your labor for this piece of paper, they have taken the value of a dollar and reduced it by something in the neighborhood of 98%, David. And yet you still have to work that 8 or 10 hour day. You still have to exchange your labor for their paper. So it really truly is literally a tool of enslavement.
Absolutely. And, the other part of it is thinking through what freedom really means. There was a great essay by a couple of good thinkers, great thinkers, about freedom. And most people, if you really get to it, going back to the Stockholm syndrome, is they rather be told what to do. I mean, I call it the big daddy syndrome. I want this. I want to be able to, make my own way. I want to have my own business. I want to be creative. I want to do this and that. And yet, a lot of those same folks want, daddy to take care of things. I mean, that's what the political structure is all about. You want daddy A or daddy B to take care of you, because real freedom means you have to take care of yourself. There aren't a lot of adults left in our population base. And the consequences of being truly free are scary. It's scary to think that, there's no safety net there, or there's no Social Security, or there's no, somebody's going to kiss it and make it better for you. If you have to really face the world with you either alone, and I'm a bit of a lone wolf, to be honest, but with your family and friends, your community, your tribe, however you want to define it. And there's nothing there but you in the jungle or on the high plains desert or pick a forest. I don't care where on the planet. And that's it. I mean, that's just a metaphor. I'm just using that, Sean, as a metaphor to try to get people to think past what they think is real freedom. For a quick example, and I won't name names because I'm too close to these people and I'm not trying to put anyone down. I'm just trying to point out some fallacies. And it's like, well, everything should be like this, this, and this, as long as we get free healthcare. Wait a minute. If you're really free, you know what? You're responsible for your own health, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm not trying to make a moral judgment. I mean, if a tribe decides that they're going to have such and such medicine man as the head, I'm off on a tangent. I'll get back quickly. But as long as the contract is an agreement, everybody agrees, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm not saying don't do it. What I'm saying is we don't even realize how deeply we've lost our freedoms. I mean, the best way to encapture a society is what that gal said on that film that I was in, The Four Horsemen. She said, and she's very smart, is it's the cognitive map. It's the way people think. If you could control the way people think, then you control everything. And of course, that's what's happened.
Well, that's exactly what's happened. And, as you were talking, I jotted down SJW, the social justice warrior movement that we see on these liberal college campuses. We see this idea, this seed of communism being sprinkled throughout the institutes of higher education and learning in this country, and nobody is learning anything anymore, David. There's a sad lack of critical thinking. And at the end of the day, if we know that the bankers, the Rothschild Rockefeller bankers, seeded communism, if they're behind Marxism, if they're behind this move to hyperinflate us and bring down the dollar and probably put an end to liberty and the republic as we've known it, what we see in these institutes of higher learning with these social justice warriors and this give me free education, give me free health care, give me free, there is no such thing as free. There is no free lunch, right? You have to trade your labor. You have to earn it. And sadly, the narrative by those that control the media has been this push, this gentle push into communism, and now we see it really turning into a slippery slope as they take this nation really into absolute despotism. And that gets us back to this tool of enslavement. Now they want to ban cash. And as Wolf Street just shared the other day, if you pull your money out of the banking system to protect it and you stuff it under your mattress, you aren't doing what the government wants you to do at this point. You're not spending it. And so they're going to try to force people to spend it. And now they're waging a war on cash. They print the stuff out of thin air, and they don't want you to have any of it, David. And now former U.S. Treasury Secretary Larry Summers has called to ban the $100 bill. These people want to literally enslave us to their nightmarish system. And really our only respite is physical gold and silver, I think, David.
Well, it certainly appears that way. I'm looking ahead. Been a bit of a visionary most of my life, and I'm looking at financial technology. And I keep exploring it more and more. In fact, I just came back from a conference in Las Vegas. I just got back a couple days ago. I'll be writing about in the next Morgan Report. I agree with you, Sean. I think there's opportunities out there to circumvent the banking system. Obviously, Bitcoin is one of them, and I've got my own thoughts on Bitcoin. If you want to see what I think, you can Google David Morgan talks about Bitcoin. I'm sure something will come up. But there's possibly the ability to have a blockchain or some type of payment system outside the conventional banking system that will debit gold and silver. I think that's actually the direction that we'll be going, but there'll be all kinds of things in the free market. I'm for free market money. In other words, if you have an idea that works, and again, you go back to the community level, and some of these communities have their own currency, and everybody agrees to it. It's a verbal or written contract. You say, yeah, well, that's fine. We all agree, that that's the way it's going to work. Why not?
Yeah, well, you're 100% right, but the Federal Reserve wants their monopoly on their debt-based note. That's the problem, because they don't want Bitcoin, they don't want precious metals, but you're absolutely right. I'm all for free market currency, free market trading as well.
No, I'm not arguing with you, Sean, and I'm not.
No, I know. We're on the same page. We just know the enemy is the Federal Reserve.
As the pressure comes on harder and harder and harder, and there's more, they try to lock it up to the point of like it's all digital and there's no cash and all that you just outlined. Believe it, or I know you're not going to say believe it or not, I'm saying to the audience, believe it or not, there's always those type of free market ideals that will pop out. They call it the black market. They'll name us nasty names, but what in reality, from an objective perspective, all it is people trying to do what people have always wanted, and that's to be left alone, not controlled by someone else. I mean, when you think about what is slavery, you're controlled by someone else. Whether you have a great, bedroom and free healthcare and great meals and all this stuff, if someone's controlling you, are you really free? And the answer is you're not. But most people say, well, as long as it's comfortable enough, I don't care.
Right.
I feel good. I love my master. What's wrong with you? I get, as you said, what's called a liberal today. So the point, again, is to be really free really is something that most people don't recognize what the responsibility that goes with it is. However, the banking system is so corrupt. There's more than one of us. I mean, there's several of us that are looking for opportunities to circumvent, establish might be a better word, establish recognizable settlement systems that do not exist today and could exist in the future. And those are, let's say, escape valves that I think is a trend. I think that's a very small, unrecognizable trend right now. And I'm putting a great deal of thought and effort into looking at that trend developing, because it's just like being locked up. The pressure is on, as Gerald Celente says, when you have nothing, you have nothing to lose. So if you have nothing, you have a lot to gain by coming up with an alternative to the monopolistic, worldwide, global banking system. I mean, who do you have that's outside of the banking system? Syria and Iran? Where's all the conflict? I mean, come on. Yeah. This is so obvious. It's stunning, but of course it's just what I look at. And I'm certainly not, there's a lot of subjects I'm very poor at. I don't devote my time to them, but I certainly do to this one.
No, you hit the nail on the head there, because look what happened to Gaddafi in Libya, as he wanted to talk about bringing a gold-backed currency to Libya. And now we're in Syria, and they would love to attack Iran. And the bottom line here is I want to just remind people, I started talking about the web bots at the beginning of the interview because it's very interesting. It doesn't mean that the web bots will be right and that silver will go to a 1-to-1 ratio with gold. It could, because we see all of the chess pieces lining up in a way that suggests that the fiat money makers in control of the Federal Reserve in this country are losing. The SGE, the ABX in China, the Deutsche Bank manipulation of silver and gold prices on the LBMA, the gold fix and silver fix in London being corrupt, the COMEX being near a default. We see all of the pieces lining up, David. And so in conclusion, I want to ask you this. I want your opinion on this. When you and I and others get together and have these conversations about, for instance, John Williams saying we might see hyperinflation of the dollar begin in 2016. He's been saying that for a while. When I talk about The Economist magazine, the 1988 cover, with a headline saying, get ready for a global currency in 2018. When we talk about these very real, tangible things, does it make us bad guys if we're wrong? Or does it make us blessed if we're still living in this paradigm 2 or 3 years from now? Because, David, I think the alternative is going to be hell on earth for anybody who's not prepared.
Oh, blessed. There's no doubt in my mind. I mean, no one really wants to give it up. I mean, at the risk of looking like a hypocrite, the system as it exists is something that we should all be very, very grateful for, and for it to unravel and for the ensuing results to take place. It's not something I'm rooting for, believe me. But I've always believed that it would unravel enough during my lifetime to be a substantial change, which means it's going to be probably a 20-year ordeal for my 2 daughters. But no, I'm number one. I'm right with the band, singing right along with the normalcy bias. Geez, I hope it can continue. And I think it's continued longer than I first believed, because to keep a Ponzi scheme going, you need to have more people at the bottom. Yeah. And of course, with the banking establishment as it exists, once they brought China into the fore, it was easy. You got 1.2 billion people to play the game now. And so that, I think, extended the ability to create the something for nothing paradigm that we all still enjoy. I mean, I'll say it, we enjoy it. I mean, I know when I go to Starbucks, I'm going to take out one of those pieces of paper, and the Federal Reserve has the Treasury print the money, but they buy it at 3 cents per bill if it's got 100 on it or if it's got 1 on it. It doesn't matter. It's just the amount of ink and paper. They pay the same price, and then they loan it to the United States citizenry through their government at face value plus interest. What a deal.
Yeah, that's right. Plus interest of, I believe, 6% is written into the Federal Reserve Charter. So every dollar printed into existence, and they can print as many as they want, guys, has debt beholden to it. And you're not a hypocrite, by the way, David. I know what you're saying. You're speaking from the heart, which is you and I both know that when this system ends, if it ends ugly with hyperinflation of the dollar, it really will be hell on earth in this country, even for those of us who are prepared, because we don't want this just-in-time food delivery system to collapse. We don't want the grocery stores to be bare. We don't want to live through what the people of Venezuela are currently living through. You and I don't want that. That's why we've been having this conversation for so long. That's why you and I and so many others in the movement, in the Liberty movement, were so behind Ron Paul and felt like he was our last best chance to take this thing back from the inside out. And now I think so many of us see the writing on the wall that the deck is stacked against the petrodollar. This system is not going to last another 10 years, and I'm not sure it's going to last another 2.
I agree. No, we're getting very, very near the end. There's too many people alive that are awake and aware and waking up and see the problems, and you're already seeing some breakdowns subtly, but they will. We could go on. There's several books that I could recommend, but there's so much to be said, and you're doing a great job, Sean. It's always an honor to be on your show. Hopefully I've been of value to you and others. I'd recommend that they go to my new website, the Morgan Report, and get the Riches and Resources Report. I wrote it myself. It's 12 pages long. It starts with the movie, The Four Horsemen, and this is a movie that's an hour and a half long. It's pretty enjoyable, thought-provoking. Solutions are suggested at the end of the movie, and it's not just about the monetary system. It's about social inequity, some of the things we've touched on. And it's a great way if you have a family member or a cousin or an aunt or a friend or somebody that's like, really not believing what's going on or wants to learn more, whatever, just say, hey, watch this movie over the weekend. You can watch it for free. I've got the link in that Riches in Resources report. And it's another one of my public services to give to people to try to help them just grasp the problem and then focus on the solution. And again, that movie at the end has some ideas about the solution. And, I've seen a lot of great warriors go down in my lifetime. I mean, Aaron Russo, certainly woke up a lot of people. And just as an aside, I was actually asked to be his campaign manager when he was going to run for governor in Nevada. That's how long I've been in this thing. But back on point, Sean, thank you for the time. Thank you for all you do. And thank you for your wide variety of guests. I'm glad that you take in, the Dane Wigingtons and some of these people that talk about what else is going on outside of just the monetary system, because it's all connected. It's so corrupt from the top down. Yeah. And there's a few of us still standing that are spreading the word. And, one match lights a great deal of darkness. And that's what you are, Sean. You are a beacon of light in this ever darkening world that we are in. And yes, I'm not always pessimistic. I really am more optimistic, but we need the sound principles to be instilled back into the population, and that is what they've taken from us. Those ideals of what true principles of founding a sane and safe society for all rest upon, and the critical thinking that's required to keep that intact, that's been taken away, and that's what really saddens me.
Yeah, me too. Well, that's very kind of you to say those nice things about what we're doing here, and I really appreciate that. And all the same back to you, David. You've been an inspiration to many of us, and we really appreciate your voice. And guys, if the mention of Dane Wigington is new to you, just go to geoengineeringwatch.org and check out the real news and information being discussed about the degradation of the environment, the climate modification and weather wars that are going on. You can research HARP, and you can find out about the warming of the oceans, which is really leading to a die-off of all sorts of species, extinction-level events. The Great Barrier Reef is dying off. We're in a really sad state of affairs here. I call it a multi-pronged attack against humanity, David, as you may have heard me say in the past. They've got the monetary system. They control the environment. They brought Fukushima on us. It's just a real nightmarish situation in which to raise kids. But I'm with you. I'm hopeful, too.
Very good, Sean. Thank you again.
All right, David. Well, thank you very much. And guys, you can check out David at themorganreport.com. Sign up for the newsletter, subscribe, support him. He's a truth teller, and we very much appreciate his time. All right, guys, thanks for your support at sgtreport.com and thelibertymill.com. Real news, 24/7. God bless. Bye-bye.